Okay, let's have a sesh on multi-channel distribution. So multi-channel distribution comes out of the marketing mix, and you're referring to the P of the 4 Ps, that is place, being how you're going to distribute your products to your customers. You might be faced with a case study where you have a business and it distributes its products through multiple channels, different channels. So it could be they distribute it through an offline outlet. So to me and you, that's a shop. It could be a catalogue, so they might be doing it through the post. Or they might be doing it through online e-commerce. That could be through an app or a website. So they are distributing their product to their customers through multiple channels of distribution. Many channels of distribution. Sometimes it might be called multi-channel distribution, or you might hear it called omni-channel distribution. All the same thing. In this session, I'm going to go through the pros of having multiple channels of distribution and the problems, the cons of having multiple channels of distribution. So starting with the pros. Well, number one is you're going to be open 24/7. That means that customers can buy your product whenever they want, and that's a fantastic thing to have. Also, there's going to be many ways that they can purchase the product. They can purchase it in the shop, through the catalogue, or they can purchase it online or through the app. So that's likely to, having those multiple channels of distribution, increase sales and therefore increase revenue. You also need to think that if you have multiple channels of distribution, you're meeting the convenience, the needs of the customer. It's very convenient if the customer, can do it where they want to do it, where they want to purchase it. It might be that they try the product on in a store and then buy it online. Maybe it's clothing, for example. You want to try on the jumper in store and then go on the website and buy it when you get home. Or it could be that you live in a rural area. There's urbanisation occurring. Many people are moving towards cities. But what if you're in a rural area where there's no outlet near to you? Then you can use the online option. So in that case, you've used the channel of distribution that meets your need. Also, by having all of these options, it could increase customer satisfaction because they're happy because they can buy it where and when they want. And therefore, you've increased brand loyalty by having these multiple channels of distribution. Number two is that you have the ability to charge different prices for different channels of distribution that you operate in. For example, in the case of number one, offline outlet, a shop, it's likely that you're going to have higher fixed costs in having a shop because you've got to pay potentially the rent for that shop. So you might be able to charge a slightly higher price in the shop versus online. And by doing that, well, you're able to account for the costs, the increased costs of the different channels of distribution. And number three is that you're going to have increased brand visibility, because if you are using different channels of distribution, you might notice that different segments, different customer segments use these different channels of distribution. For example, it's very generalistic, but probably younger customers are going to use the online e-commerce option versus the more traditional elder parts of demographics might stick with the catalogues, like of the olden days with Argos catalogues. So there's that possibility by having different channels of distribution that you can target different segments. And that's great because it's giving you more options for essentially more sales. And number four is that because you've got these different segments and these different multi-channel distributions, if you do any market research and customer research to see how satisfied they are, how you could improve in the future, you could argue that primary research will be of a much higher quality versus if you only used one of the channels of distribution. So it will enable you to improve and meet the customer's needs in the long term. And in the long term, if you're doing that, you're making profits. And on the other side, looking at the cons of having many channels of distribution. Number one is that if you use more than one channel of distribution, it's likely to lead to higher costs. The reason why is because you've got to maintain each of these channels of distribution. For example, if you've got a shop, well, you've got to maintain that. You need staff to be there. They need to keep the windows, the shop looking exactly how it needs to look. You might need to train these staff. So many extra costs are involved with that particular channel of distribution. If you've got a website, well, you're going to need developers to maintain the website. Well, if there's bugs, it's really important with websites to keep on top of them and make sure they look how they need to look. And likewise with catalogues, you're going to need someone to design the catalogues, how you're going to distribute the catalogues to potential homes so customers can look through the catalogues and buy them. All sorts of costs involved here when you start doing different channels of distribution. Going back to the websites, having websites nowadays, well, you need the website to look top dollar. It needs to look good because it's high risk if it doesn't look brilliant. Because we are just used to seeing websites that look perfect. So if you've got a poor website, it's going to affect your brand image. If it looks a bit tatty, it's going to discourage you, disincentivize you from purchasing a good on that website. And for the business, that's going to mean lower sales if the website doesn't look good. So there's lots of extra costs involved. And number two, it's going to be hard to ensure that customer service is equal on each of these channels of distribution. Maybe it's easier to have better customer service in one than in the other. And is that going to be a problem? Because if you've got customer service that's great in a shop, for example, but poor online, then that might affect your image. And there's also the risk that if one of the channels of distribution has a poor customer service, will it actually affect the reputation of the other channels of distribution and therefore the overall reputation of the business and ultimately leading to a decline in sales if that's the case. And number three, there's always a risk that customers are price sensitive. What I mean by that is that the customers will always go to where the lowest price exists, and the lowest price is likely to exist online because there's less fixed costs. But that could be a problem if customers are always buying their products on e-commerce, on the app, on the website, where the lower price exists, because that's ultimately going to mean lower revenue for the business. And if you see a question on multi-channel distribution that comes up as an advise or recommend type question, maybe it's recommend if they should have multiple channels of distribution or they should stick with just one channel of distribution, then a potential judgment you could have if you stay on this side that they should have multiple channels of distribution is question what the competitors are doing. Do the competitors have multiple channels of distribution? Because if they do, it probably makes sense to keep up with those competitors. Otherwise, you may lose sales and reputation in the long term. And on the other side, if you're to argue that you think that they should just have one channel of distribution, maybe you could question the price sensitivity of customers. Because if the customers for that particular product in that case study are very price sensitive, then maybe it makes sense to just stick with having e-commerce as the main channel of distribution for the business and potentially the only channel of distribution for the business, because that's ultimately where customers will buy the product because it's cheaper. Hope you're enjoying these videos. Loads more to come. Make sure you like and subscribe. BizCon Sesh.